Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to finally give you my July reading wrap up, which is delayed because I was on vacation in France and then my computer broke down. Basically what happened was the network card burned out, so I had to have that replaced. Easy fix. It's just I had to go through the initial diagnostic to figure out what was actually the problem. So going through YouTube, doing a network reset, working out all the internet stuff, doing like IP configuration, restart type stuff, but it was good. I actually figured it out all on my own. I just went to the shop to get it actually physically fixed. So kudos to me. But yeah, so because of that, in my vacation in France, which I feel like I just mentioned, but I might not have just mentioned, but just to mention again, yeah, due to my vacation in France, I am a little bit delayed with that. But we're here now, and so let's go with what I read in July, which I think I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a little better about my reading these days. If anything, I think I'm being more sorry, I haven't spoken in a while. I haven't done a video in a while, so I'm a little tangled with my words. I feel like I'm reading a little bit more continuously, or more like frequent, like consistently. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm reading more consistently. So right now I've definitely been trying to go to bed at 10 p.m. like I always used to do, where 10 p.m. would start my reading time. And so I'm trying to work up the stamina again to just read from like 10 to midnight like I used to do. I'm still looking at my phone a little bit. I'm still a little bit distracted, or like still watching Netflix at times, but at least I'm getting some reading in that time every single day. That is helping me build up pages a little bit at a time, which allows you to complete a book, which is how reading works. But in any case, yeah, feeling a little better about reading right now. So let's see what I actually did get through. And I don't even know how I'm going to discuss these books, but let's go with the easiest one. So I read, because I was in France, I wanted to read in French. So I read another Jules Verne book, De la Terre à la Lune, so from the Earth to the Moon. And this is one of, I don't know, I would say this is like one of his like more well-known titles, even though strangely enough, it's like a title that people don't read as much compared to 20,000 Leagues and compared to Journey to the Center of the Earth, is what I mean. Like I feel like people know those titles and have read them, while this one they might know the title but haven't actually read it. And this was fun. This was yeah, I don't even know how to talk about it. So basically, the story is that these group of Americans, the Civil War is over, like all of like the within America type skirmishes are over, and so they have no reason to use their guns. But Americans, proud Americans, and I think Jules Verne is amazing in depicting Americans. I think he's so funny. Unironically funny, or actually purposely funny, I don't know which, but in any case, this is the way he describes Americans is really fun. But these men who are obsessed with guns and who have no use for them create this association, kind of like the NRA, but we're not going to go into the political side of that. But they create this association to sort of praise the art of the gun. And the president of the association comes up with this idea to use this fantastic American-made technology and to use American prowess when it comes to shooting things, and basically just taking advantage of this large group of people to create this new project, which is to shoot a bullet from the Earth to the Moon. So it's exactly how it sounds. It's like, we're just going to shoot a gun up towards the moon. Very American, or at least that's what Jules Verne depicts Americans as. But super, super fun. And so it becomes this this book about the progress behind them shooting a bullet at the moon. So it's one of Jules Verne's more science heavy type books. So Jules Verne kind of has he mixes science in all of his books, but he has some that are more like kind of imagination type science, or for example, having to escape a volcano. And then he has things that are a little bit more based on actual science. But then he also has some books that are more adventure based. There are some books that are just like really just plotting, like the science is the core and the adventure kind of just happens around it. And this is what this kind of book is. It's definitely more science heavy. So for me, it started off wonderfully with that really fun, semi-ironic, but not depiction of Americans, just really saying how Americans truly are the best at shooting at things. I just thought that was really, really funny. But then it does go into the development of this sort of like bullet, this sort of cannon. So developing the cannon, developing the powder that's going to be necessary, calculating the mathematics in terms of when's the best time to shoot towards the moon. Is it actually feasible? Creating the actual bullet capsule and whatnot. So you're gonna have like the middle third of the book is going to be just that. It's just the science. Now I would say it's readable science. And I'm kind of I'm gonna spoil what happening in August, but I'm actually reading the sequel to this, and this is so science heavy. It's actually pretty boring, and I started skimming a lot of the science heavy passages. So here, the science is still very readable, and actually very interesting, while this is just like, okay, I don't need to know how many kilometers there are between this and that, this and that, this and that, this and that, this and that. So I'll get into this, and I'll probably review this book again for my August wrap up. But just to say, here, the middle part is very science heavy, but it's actually on the readable side, which helps you push through towards the ending, which comes to the, not surprise, but it is a surprise, but not really a surprise when you consider the fact that this is an adventure book, but it comes with the surprise that a Frenchman comes to the soils of America and says, send me to the moon. So instead of just shooting a bullet at the moon, they shoot an actual carriage that can carry passengers to the moon. And this book ends on a cliffhanger, which is why you need to read Autour de la Lune, which is around the moon. So we're not going to get into this one until August, but I'll review both of these again at that time. But yeah, this was really fun because it had definitely a very solid feel of old America, which I think Jules Verne surprisingly does very well. I don't know. I'd have to like look into his history. Did he ever go to American soil? Was he just fascinated by America? What the deal was with that? But he writes America really, really well. I've read a few other of his books that take place in America, and they're always just so full of that really good American atmosphere that it's really, really fantastic. So yeah, that was really fun to read, and the cliffhanger made me immediately set out to buy that other book, which I will talk about in my book haul coming up next week, and then I'll get in my August wrap up. So that was really, really fun. Can't believe I've already been talking about 8 minutes. This is not going to be a short video. It should have been, but it's not going to be. Next, I read La Curee by Emile Zola. So they translate this as The Kill. I don't really like that title. La Curee is apparently, I actually had to look up what La Curee, but La Curee is kind of the dredges, that like the leftovers when you like chop off meat, when you butcher up meat, and you kind of send it off to the dogs. So it's kind of like sending your déchets, your waste, your like leftovers, and sending it to like the poor people, to the dogs, the people who like aren't like, who are below your status. So that's what that means. And La Curee, basically, so it's part of the Emile Zola's very famous Rougon-Macquart cycle, which Rougon-Macquart cycle is about like a 20-volume series per se, which is very realistic French society. And what it is it follows the Rougon-Macquart family as they go through France in this era, and you see all the history of France being developed around them. Now, La Curee is very, very interesting because La Curee, the history that is takes place in La Curee, is the part where Paris's old neighborhoods get torn down to create those really, really beautiful boulevards that we're now familiar with in Paris. So Boulevard Saint-Germain, like all the boulevards that go to the Champs-Élysées, Boulevard Saint-Michel, all that stuff, all the boulevards are being created in this book. And what it is is the, so this is the third book in the recommended reading order. There is no actual reading order, but there's a recommended reading order. And La Curee takes place where the brother of Eugène Rougon, who was the focus of like the second book, who is prime minister. This book follows his brother who comes to Paris and decides to make his fortune and his fame just like his brother Eugène did. And he does that by the fact that for a little while he worked in sort of administration in the office of something and such, but like sort of like the French like just taxes and receipts and things like that. He was sort of working in that sort of area, and he sort of got an insider trading. He got insider information that these boulevards were about to be constructed, and they were going to tackle these streets. They were going to tear down these particular streets. So he uses that information to basically buy property at a lower rent, and then he kind of refurnishes it. He flips the property. There we go. He flips the property so that he can sell them at a higher rate to the government, so that they can then tear it down and create these new big boulevards. So that's how he creates his fortune. And within that, the story is more so about his wife Renée, who was married to our main character Aristide because she had gotten pregnant due to a rape, and she needed to be married off very quickly. So it follows her as she grows up in this life of, not grows up, but is entered in this life of great fortune due to her husband, but she is quite bored because there's no love there. And so she looks elsewhere for a relationship. So the story, basically, the backdrop is the creation of these boulevards of Paris, and then you have this wife, husband affairs, front story, and then you're also looking at the society of the separation between high class and lower class, sort of like aristocratic money versus new money. You have all of the sort of goings-ons about, is it goings on or going ons? But goings on, I think is what you're supposed to say. All the goings on about people kind of scheming and manipulating and really trying to create their fortunes so that they can also be part of the upper echelons of French society. So super, really interesting. I love Zola, and I mean, I'm going through this cycle, so I'm really happy that I was able to read 2 Zolas this year, which is going to be a lot more helpful than reading one every other 2 years to get through the 20 book cycle. So really happy to have read this. This was excellent. Really liked you guys. So far, 3 out of 3 for the first 3 books. I loved all of them. Definitely don't miss out on any of them. So then I read, this is also spoiler for my book haul, but I purchased Amélie Nothomb, Premier Sang for First Blood. This is one of her newest releases. As far as I'm aware, she releases 1 book every year. I'm kind of behind with her books because I had actually caught up with her books. And what I mean by that is that I had read all of her books that had been published, and the only thing that I hadn't read yet were her new releases, which are released in like these bigger, like, they're not hardback, but it's like the equivalent of a hardback in terms of higher price. So you're basically paying a higher price to read the book immediately instead of waiting a few years and for these cheaper paperbacks to come back. And Amélie Nothomb, like, I like her. I've read all of the books that I've been able to read so far. Like, this is like the 25th book I've read by her. I like her, I enjoy her, but she's like a very like in the moment read for me, like instantaneous, 1-2 hours to read her books, then I'm done. I enjoy when I'm reading them, but a lot of them are very forgetful after I read them. So for me, that's not worth 16 euro. So I never buy the instantly released books. I always read these versions, but I haven't bought them in a while. So I actually have a few that I could buy, but that I haven't. So in any case, I bought this and immediately read it, and Premier Sang is a lot better than her recent books I've read, because for me, Amélie Nothomb, I feel, is best when she's writing when she writes in a semi-autobiographical way is when she's strongest. So her books about her life in Japan, her books about her fiance, her books about herself, and this book included, which is actually a book about her father. It talks about the childhood of her father and how he grew up in, or how he spent his holidays with another part of the Nothomb family, and how they were incredibly poor, and they really treated her father quite poorly, but in a way it was good for him because it helped build his character and helped create this sort of like a senses of survival for him, which helped him later on when he was in a hostage situation, when he was a diplomat in Africa. So that was really interesting. And I mean, I don't think, like, this book doesn't have as much of her usual humor, but I think that was good because sometimes I think she can get kind of carried away with being punny and ironic and self-deprecating. And I think this was just a good, solid book about her father and his life and how along the way that would create her, basically. So it's still narcissistic in an Amélie Nothomb kind of way, because the book, since it's her father, eventually in a way the book is about her, so it's still narcissistic in a Nothomb kind of way, but it was good out of all her works. So yeah, Nothomb is a strange author. It's like you enjoy them but you don't. I think she's narcissistic, but that's refreshing in a kind of way, and it's really weird. But yeah, I read this, and so now next time I go to France I can buy a few more again to catch up with her works. Finally, the last novel that I finished reading in July, I did not start and finish in 1 month. I've been reading this for a little while because it was my at work book, so I've been reading as a ebook, so I've been reading off a PDF on a computer. But yeah, I finished Shirley finally by Charlotte Bronte. Now I have read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and I've read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And that's it. That's all I've read of the Bronte sisters. So I'm still very new to the Bronte sisters. And also, to be honest, who writes Pride and Prejudice? Oh my gosh, who writes Pride and Prejudice? Because for a long time I always got confused in my head, thinking that Jane Eyre was the name of an author and Jane Eyre was the author of Pride and Prejudice. And I know that's not right, but who is the author of Pride and Prejudice? Why can I not get Jane Austen? That's why I was confusing Jane Austen and Jane Eyre. Jane Austen. I actually haven't ever read Jane Austen, so I haven't read some of the biggest works by women writers in England. I know, like, it'll happen eventually, but yeah, there's just something, I don't really turn to these authors very often, maybe because of the reading Wuthering Heights in high school and not really enjoying it that much. Well, enjoying it without really enjoying it. I think I'd have to reread it. Any case, finally finished Shirley, and I really enjoyed this. I know this is one of the lesser works. I know from reading, from watching other YouTube videos about people who have read Shirley, that it's one of the least liked books, least appreciated books. People find it kind of boring and too long and whatnot. But I actually quite enjoyed myself. Shirley is about basically just this town, this man named Roger Moore. He owns a mill and he's pushing to really innovate and really push things forward, to the anger of the people who actually work in the mill, because they're going to lose his jobs if he innovates too much, because their jobs will be replaced by a machine. And so Roger Moore is told by the people that he should be careful because he's going to anger a lot of people, and that could be really bad. So the story really focuses on all these people who are around Roger Moore and their interactions, as you have this backdrop of the mills basically being shut down in England because of the war in France, meaning that all trade routes have been stopped, so there's no demand for fabric and all those things. So the mills have become unnecessary. So the anger between the lower classes and the upper classes is really, really like tense in the background. And so you can feel that, and that was really, so that's basically the story. And then you have Shirley, who's a very strong woman, owns her own kind of property, and she's there to kind of calm the situation down. She's very good at leading them, and she's she works with Roger. She has agreements with Robert Moore, and then people start to question whether or not Shirley and Robert Moore don't have a romantic relationship. So all of that, and made for a really, really interesting book. Now I would have to say that it does kind of slow down at a certain part. For me personally, I wanted more about the relationship between the Robert Moore and the lower classes. I wanted more friction, the more tension in that. I wanted more like exploration of that topic, but I think that that's more of a Dickens type thing versus the Bronte sisters, who focus more on the relationship of people, and I don't mean just romantic relationships, I mean just actual relationships, social interactions between people. But she did that excellent. And what I really liked about this book is the style in which it's written, in which she really talks to the reader during the book. So especially at the very beginning, when she's introducing all the characters, she'll be like, well, reader, it's not very important for me to really go that much further into this character because you're not going to see him that much anyway. But if I were to tell you, and then she kind of goes on and tells you and gives you a proper description of the character. And I just think that sort of back and forth between us, the reader, and her, the writer, is very, very interesting. And you can really see her within the book. You can really see her modern, modern at the time views within this book. So really pushing the strength of women. And I really liked Shirley because Shirley is such a strong female character, and I think a lot of people and a lot of women really fall in love with that character, but I think they get kind of disappointed to the end when she falls in love with someone and says that I really want someone who can handle me and who can sort of be my master. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, she's not a strong woman at all if she wants someone else, especially a man, to be her master. And I'm like, no, it's you. Sometimes you're so strong a person that you don't want to be strong all the time. You want someone who kind of can handle you and can push you into a side that you're not always doing. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. I know I'm kind of like that. I'm definitely more of a Shirley than I am a Caroline Houston, to be honest. But yeah, I just really liked her character. I thought she was really, really well fleshed out, really interesting, and I liked all the characters in the book. I think that they were obviously fantastic. So really happy I read this. It was a real pleasure to read. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is on the long side. It's like 600 pages, and there are little parts that where it does stagnate a little bit, especially when it comes to relationships. But I think that's when Charlotte Bronte goes back to the background of the mills and stuff and really brings that back to the foreground again, and that's where the plot is able to push forward again. And I think that was really smart for her to do, to really sort of go back and forth between the interactions between the town, but also having that very, very important background come back to the forefront. So yeah, really, really love that. Really, really fantastic. And then I read, to finish off the month, or to start off the month, I just read 4 volumes of Love Hina. It's very, very famous harem manga from back in the early 90s. And I've read the majority of another series of this mangaka, who is Akamatsu Ken, and mangaka meaning the manga artist. And I never got to finish that because I was reading it when I moved to Japan. So I have the entire series in the US. So I just haven't been able to finish that series. But yeah, this is his more famous series. This is the series that sort of put him on the map, really. And it's fun, but it would have been funnier if I read it like 10, 15 years ago, because I'm kind of like, I've seen this humor too many times for it to be fresh and funny and innovative in that sense. So I can see it's very good. It's well drawn. It's a funny harem manga. All the stereotypes are there. The characters are funny, etc. But I am struggling to actually laugh myself because I'm like, oh yeah, that was pretty expected. Yeah, like I'm familiar with that joke. So yeah, I've only read the first four volumes. I thought I was going to read the entire series by the end of August, but I don't find myself picking them up right now. So I might have to try again later. But yeah, that's it for the month of July. We finally caught up. Next week I can give you my book haul, and then we can move on to like August stuff. Oh, and I have one more video that's kind of like catching up with something, but it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being patient while I was on vacation, but also while my computer was all screwy, and I'm glad that I can be back. So yeah, thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.